All right, hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Real Estate. And obviously I am the host. This is Kyle Seyboth with Keller Williams Realty. And I thank you for tuning in. In the last few weeks, we've had a lot of guests on, right? So let's just recap who has been on. So first week, I was just speaking about what the show was about. Week number 2, we had a mortgage broker. Week number 3, we had a property management company, the president and CEO of a property management company. And then last week, we had a mortgage broker on as well. My goal this week is basically to go over any questions that I've gotten from anyone either listening to this show or my radio show that have reached out to me and either called me, texted me, emailed me some different questions. So it's important that I address this stuff. And there were some good questions that I wanted to address today that I think is helpful, especially in the communities that we're closest to here with the program. So the first question that comes up a lot and I want to address is the question of, I own a home now, I'm looking to buy a house, what are the next steps? Like, how do I go from actually owning a house into buying my next house when I bought my first house, I was renting. It was very easy, right? You're renting, you get pre-approved, you move forward, you put offers in, you purchase a property, you move from your current rental situation into your current permanent, household. So now you're at a different point. Now you own a house, you own your starter home, you've been there for 5 to 7 years, and you're looking to upgrade and move into that second house, right? Whether it's your dream house, your next level house, your move up house, whatever that looks like, you're ready to go. So how do you start? So the first thing that I tell people to do is first meet with a real estate professional. So find a local realtor, find someone that deals in those locations, that understands the market, that understands what your house is valued at. Have them come to your house, right? So we want them to come over, look at the property, sit down with you, explain to you what the value of your property is worth, and then on top of that, also understand, what do you need to do to your house to make it sellable? So a lot of people, will just start doing things, whether it's paint, flooring, kitchens, bathrooms, whatever that is. And my recommendation always to people is every house isn't the same and every situation isn't the same. Some houses need those upgrades just to sell. Some houses don't, and the new buyer may, go ahead and do those upgrades. So what would I say to do with that real estate professional? Have them come over, walk through the entire house. Have them go inside, outside, the basement, check out everything and ask questions. Understand what things make sense to fix, what things don't make sense to fix, what things make sense to upgrade, and what things don't make sense to upgrade, right? So that's step number 1. From that real estate professional should be able to get you a valuation on your property. So when you get this valuation, this is important because as a seller, you need to understand, I own the house for X, right? Let's just use real numbers. So I bought the house for $100,000 back 10 years ago, okay? I put $50,000 into it. My mortgage is now $80,000. Okay, so I technically owe $80,000 on this property. Now, as a homeowner, I'm going to say, okay, I owe $80,000, but I paid $100,000 and I put $50,000 into it. So I'm technically in the property for $150,000. So for me to actually gain equity, make a profit, take some excess capital and move on to another house, I need to sell it for at least $150,000 plus whatever the commissions and fees and all that sort of stuff is. So technically, if you do quick math, $165,000 would technically give you a profit on the property and make you whole of that $150,000. That's probably your lowest amount to get any sort of profit. Anything greater than $165,000 will give you bigger profit and allow you to move on. So why is that important? So the reason that's important is because you need to know when you go to buy the new house, how much money are you going to take away from the old house when you move forward? So as a seller, right, you need to understand, I owe X, I sell it for this, I'm going to have a certain amount of money to use towards my down payment in addition to what I already have in my bank account. So that's the next step. So the first step, again, to reiterate, Have a realtor come by, take a look at the property, give you a valuation. Step number 2, run actual numbers based on the numbers that real estate professional gives you. That will tell you right there, does it make sense as a seller to actually sell the property? If the answer is yes, you move on with the next step. If the answer is no, you may have to wait for the market to come back. You may have to do different things to increase your value. There's a whole bunch of different things that could come into play to give you a higher valuation and allow you to sell your property and actually make a profit. So that's the first steps. After that, now we're looking to purchase another property, right? So now everyone says, okay, what do I do next? What's the next step? What do I have to do now? So now you need to go back and get pre-approved, okay? And you have to go to a mortgage professional and ask to be pre-approved for a value, assuming that you sell your house. So you should take the assumption that you sell your house for the number the real estate professional told you, and that number, right, is going to give you X amount of dollars to put towards a down payment. Now the mortgage broker will now pre-approve you based upon those numbers. So for example, you sell for that 165, you have about, 70 grand that you're going to move towards the next property. That 70, right, now becomes part of your down payment and helps you qualify for the next purchase. So why is that important? So now it's important because you need to know if you're selling something, are you actually getting an upgrade? Are you qualified in the price range that's going to give you an upgrade in property, that's going to bring you to the city or town that you want, and that's going to actually give you the house that you're looking for. So if you can sell, but you can't buy for that same amount of money, then the process is flawed. You're not going to be able to go to that next step, right? So once you get pre-approved, now you're past another hurdle. Now you know, okay, the house I want to buy is worth X. The value that I'm looking for is X. I've got pre-approved for X, so I'm okay there. So now we can move forward with the next steps. So the next step in the process, okay, the next step in the process is now getting your house on the market first. And why is that important? So the reason it's important to get your house on the market first is because now you know, are you actually able to get the price that you're looking for, right? So can I get $165,000 from my house? Is that possible? Is that a number that's feasible? The market will tell us that. So when we put our house on the market, right, we put it on at a certain price that we're looking to get, and then we start to market it just like any other house, okay? But what's the biggest hurdle and the biggest question that people get so concerned about is what happens if I sell my house and I have nowhere to go? Right, so that's a good question. So what happens then? Put your house on the market, sell your house, someone wants to buy it, you have nowhere to go. So what we do is we put a clause in the contract that says this sale is subject to the seller finding suitable housing. So what does that mean? That means that the seller, me as a seller, I can't sell this house and close on this house until I actually find somewhere to go. So if I'm looking at 123 Main Street and that is not affordable to me, I can't buy it, the deal falls apart, I do not sell my house to the current buyer. So you always put your house on the market first. And you always put your house on the market to see, A, if I'm going to get the price I want, B, how the activity is, and then C, to understand what the market's calling for in my price range. So if I need to reduce it or I need to make any changes, I can make the changes before I already have a house I'm looking to buy. The other big factor, when buying a house, right? So when you're buying a house in this market, and this is a very competitive market where sellers are somewhat controlling the market still. It's still a seller's market. So when you're buying a house in a seller's market, it's very competitive, right? So when buying a house, if you were to offer on a property contingent upon selling your house and your house isn't even listed, your offer doesn't hold any weight with that seller. So your offer as the buyer is not as good if I were to offer and have my house already pending, if I were to offer and not have a house to sell, or any situation where I didn't have that contingency. So that's the next biggest reason why you put your house on the market. If you want something and you find a house you want to buy and your house is not on the market, your offer doesn't hold any weight. And you're automatically going to get skipped past with anyone else that's put an offer on the property that doesn't have those contingencies. So the next step, like we talked about, get the house on the market. get the house on the market, get people in the house, start getting some activity to get a feel for what your house is worth and how the market feels about it. Okay? So then after that, right? So what I tell my sellers is once we get interest, once we get buyers looking, once we do open houses, we get people kind of out there and understanding, you know, this is the house they want, there's people interested, there's some buzz around it, then we can start looking at houses. So at that point, we can start looking at houses in your price range that are within the cities and within the locations that you're looking for. So those cities and towns, we would set you up on a search. We would get all those listings sent to you. You could also use the Zillows, the Realtors.coms, whatever sites you like to use to kind of navigate through that. And then start looking at houses as you're getting activity through your house, through the sale of your house. So again, to reiterate the whole entire experience, what do I do if I want to buy a house and sell my house and sell my house at the same time? Again, real estate professional, okay, number one. Number two, valuation. Number three, run the numbers. Number four, get pre-approved. Number five, put your house on the market. Number six, start looking for houses. And number seven, offers on both properties and move forward towards a closing. So that question comes up probably to me 2 or 3 times a week, and I think it's important that I address it. We talk about all the time, the purpose of this show is to add value, to give people little tidbits on real estate. There's so many people that reach out to me that want to know, that have questions and so on and so forth regarding real estate in general. So I think that's a topic that's important. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, we were planning on this week doing this, but it will have to be next week due to the weather. I will be doing a show on the road where we'll be at an actual home. We're going to be taking a look at the property and understanding the components of a house. So when a buyer, a first-time buyer, a buyer who hasn't bought in 15, 20, 30 years, does their inspection, does a walkthrough, does a viewing, you understand the difference between every different portion of the house, whether it's a furnace versus a boiler, a gas heating system versus electric, 100 amps versus 200 amps. What are the differences? What's good? What's bad? And what's ugly? So I think that's another value-added show that we'll do hopefully next week if the weather is cooperative and we can get some folks out, you know, we can get the camera folks out there to get a good shot of a nice sunny day. So the next question that I will attack, or the next topic that we'll talk about, we'll go from that, you know, regular homeowner situation, we'll go into the investment space now. And this question is maybe a little deeper than some folks are looking towards, but it's a good question regarding investment properties, and I get this question all the time. How do you value a multifamily 3 or greater units? You know, I'm new to this. I don't understand. What do I look for? What do I look at? What are the different things that I want to kind of attack as a buyer or as an investor? So to break this down in a simplistic fashion, there's a few things that you look towards. Number one is location, right? So any property we look at, we want to look at the location. Is my value going to increase or decrease over time based on the current market and the current location? And that's a question that can be answered by doing drive-bys, by understanding the tenant mix, and by going to the property and actually taking a look at it and the surrounding properties in the area. Number two is cash flow, right? Everyone hears the word cash flow or the catchphrase cash flow. What does that really mean? Cash flow is you have the rents, you have all your expenses, and whatever is left over is your free cash flow. So if I'm going to invest a certain amount of money into this property or into this project, and my cash flow is, after I take the rents and the expenses, is a negative number, that's not a good investment, right? So that's not something we want to do. If my rents minus my expenses is a big positive number, then great, that's a good investment, and that's something that we want to pursue to the next level. So I always tell people, first and foremost, do your drive-bys, your Google Earth, your Google Maps, whatever that looks like, to understand the area, and then let's dive into the financials, and let's understand what the cash flow looks like. And then to take it one more step further, as you get into the bigger units, you want to look at the actual expenses and the actual rents in the area or in the property and compare them to what we call as pro forma numbers, which are either better than or worse than those numbers. So you can get a true picture on what this property is bringing in. So sometimes the rents on a property are higher than what they would be normally if these tenants moved out. And that's a situation where you need to factor that in. Or the expenses are lower than what they actually should be because the owner's using guesstimate numbers, and now you want to use actual real numbers. Right, so that's another step of that process. And then finally, we talk about what's called a cap rate, which is the true indicator of a commercial property to really determine if that property has the value that an investor is looking for. A lot of investors won't even look at anything with a low cap rate, which means that the income that they're receiving divided by the price is too low, that the investment doesn't make sense. And that's a whole nother equation that I can go through at another time. But at the end of the day, that cap rate is really the big thing that people look at for anything 4 or more units. So with that, I just wanted to give some insight on a regular homeowner, an investor, and understand the difference between two big topics that come up and how you have to wear. In my role, I have to wear 2 different hats. So I have to be, the hat that deals with Susie homeowner, but also the hat that deals with Susie investor. So it's important that we understand that, and in my position, I can explain that to people so my clients are served correctly and they get all the knowledge and all the service and all the know-how and wherewithal to kind of make that decision on both ends. So with that, we are going to conclude this episode of the show. Again, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening to the radio show, to the podcast, to the videos, everything. I appreciate the support, and I am here to help anyone that has any real estate questions at all. Have a wonderful week, and talk to you all soon.